Admiral Park stood in the center of the grand hall, her dark blue uniform crisp and perfect. The 17 alien representatives watched her with growing unease. Some had multiple eyes that blinked rapidly. Others had skin that changed colors with their emotions. All of them were powerful beings who had looked down on humans for decades. The human council chamber was built to impress. Tall windows showed Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. The walls displayed moving images of human achievements, cities, ships, and colonies. But today, all eyes were on Admiral Park. For 70 years, we have endured the so-called protection of the Galactic Concordat, she said, her voice calm but strong enough to reach every corner of the room. Today, that changes. The Vraxian ambassador shifted in his seat, his facial tentacles, 12 purple appendages that moved with his thoughts, twisted together in what humans had learned was a sign of extreme worry. The Vraxians had been the first aliens humans met, and they had never been kind. They had presented the Concordat as a gift. In reality, it had been a chain. Park pressed a button on the podium. Behind her, the wall screens changed to show new images. Weapons unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Ships that could fold space. Guns that could target specific genetic patterns. Shields that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Humanity was never as defenseless as we appeared. Admiral Park continued. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting the gaze of each representative. Every concession, every humiliation we accepted, it was to buy time. The Drex representative stood up suddenly, his 4 arms raised in protest. This is madness. You signed the Concordat willingly. You agreed to remain a junior species with limited technology. You cannot simply. Sit down, Park said quietly. The Drex ambassador fell silent. Something in her voice made him obey. General Taz stood up from his seat at the council table. He was older than Park, with gray hair and a face marked by scars from the early wars. The terms of the Concordat were clear, he said. Humanity would receive protection in exchange for limitations on our development and military growth. But the protection was a lie. In the Centauri incident, 3 human colonies were attacked. The Concordat forces arrived late. 2,000 humans died. That was an unfortunate delay, the myth ambassador said. Her crystalline body sparkled in the light, not a violation of terms. In the Jupiter mining dispute, Vraxian corporations took human resources without payment. General Ta continued as if she hadn't spoken. When we complained, the Galactic Court ruled against us. When we appealed, our evidence mysteriously disappeared. Admiral Park held up a small device in her hand. It was simple, just a metal cylinder with a button on top. We have prepared for this day for 50 years. Every human world, every colony, every station has been building in secret. She pressed the button. Throughout the room, the alien representatives received urgent messages. Their communicators beeped, buzzed, and flashed with alerts from their home worlds and colonies. The Vraxian ambassador's tentacles went completely straight, a sign of shock. What is happening? He asked. See for yourselves, Park said with a small smile. On screens around the room, images appeared from across the galaxy. Human orbital platforms that had been simple trade stations were changing shape. Hidden panels opened to reveal weapons. Research outposts transformed into military bases. Mining operations uncovered hidden fleets. Impossible, the Drex shouted. Our monitors would have detected this construction. Dr. Ba stood up from the human council table. She was small and looked fragile, but her voice was strong. Not if we built using materials that absorb scanner waves. Not if we work during solar flares that block your sensors. Not if we develop technology you never imagined. The Krith representative, a being made of living metal, made a sound like grinding gears. This is a violation of galactic law. The penalties no longer apply to us. Admiral Park interrupted. She looked at each alien representative in turn. We withdraw from the Concordat, effective immediately. The room erupted in angry shouts. Some representatives stood up. Others called their governments. The Vraxian ambassador's tentacles turned a dangerous shade of red. In the chaos, Security Chief Han moved closer to Admiral Park. "They're reacting exactly as we predicted," he said quietly. "And their home fleets?" Park asked. "Moving as expected. The Vraxians have ordered ships to our colony on Proxima Centauri. The Drex fleet is heading to our Mars base." Han smiled slightly. "They have no idea what's waiting for them." General Tai raised his voice to be heard over the noise. "Representatives of the Galactic Concordat, your attention, please." The room slowly quieted. "What you're seeing is not a declaration of war," Ta said. "It is a declaration of independence. Humanity will no longer accept second-class status in the galaxy." A new image appeared on the main screen. A massive ship, unlike any design the aliens had seen before. Its hull seemed to shimmer, sometimes looking solid, sometimes almost transparent. "The UNSS Liberation," Admiral Park said. "The first of our new fleet, currently in orbit around Earth." "Impossible," the Myth ambassador whispered. "Our sensors would have detected a ship that size." "Not this ship," Dr. Ba said. "It exists partially in another dimension. Your technology cannot see it unless we want you to." The Vraxian ambassador slammed his fist on the table. "The Concordat will not stand for this. We will crush your rebellion before it begins." Admiral Park's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, I suggest you check with your fleet commanders before making threats." A message came through to the Vraxian's communicator. His tentacles went limp as he read it. "Our ships near your Proxima colony," he began, "have been disabled." Park finished for him. "Not destroyed. No one has been harmed. But they cannot move, communicate, or fire weapons." The Drex ambassador received a similar message. His 4 arms dropped to his sides in shock. "How?" he asked simply. Admiral Park nodded to Dr. Ba, who touched her tablet. The screen showed a small device, no bigger than a human hand. "Quantum field disruptors," she explained. "They create a bubble where certain laws of physics are temporarily altered. In simple terms, your ship's energy systems cannot function within the field." General Ta stepped forward. "For too long, humanity has been treated as weak. You took our resources. You limited our growth. You studied us like animals." "But we studied you too," Admiral Park added. "We learned your weaknesses. We developed technologies you never imagined because you thought we were too primitive." The room was silent now. The alien representatives stared at the humans with new eyes, with fear, with respect, and with growing understanding. "We do not want war," Park said finally. "We want equality. A new agreement. Fair trade. Mutual defense. Real partnership." She pressed another button on her device. The screen showed human ships near alien worlds, ships that had been hidden until now. But they were not attacking. They were simply waiting. "The choice is yours," Admiral Park said. "A new relationship based on respect, or—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. The message was clear. "We withdraw from the Concordat, effective immediately. We are ready to discuss new terms whenever you are." Dr. Kim looked through the thick glass window at the massive testing chamber beneath Europa's icy surface. The room was over 50 meters across, carved from the moon's frozen core over decades of secret work. The chamber walls glowed with a soft blue light from the quantum generators. In the center sat a small model of a human research station, perfect in every detail, but only 3 meters wide. "Begin test sequence," she said into her headset. Her team of 20 scientists and engineers tapped at their control panels. The machines hummed louder. Energy readings climbed higher on the monitors. "Quantum field stable," reported Dr. Song, her chief assistant. His fingers moved quickly over his screen. "Power levels at 60% and rising." Dr. Kim nodded but said nothing. Her dark eyes focused intensely on the model in the chamber. This was the 37th test. The previous 36 had failed in different ways, some with small problems, some with explosive results. 3 scientists had died during Test 22. She still had nightmares about it. 70%, Dr. Song reported. The lights in the lab dimmed slightly as the system drew more power. 80%. The air around the model station began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The effect grew stronger. The model seemed to blur at the edges. 90%. Dr. Kim held her breath. This was where most tests had failed. 95%. The model station was now hard to look at directly. It seemed to shift and move even though it was perfectly still. It appeared to be in multiple places at once, like seeing double or triple, but more complex. 100%. Field is stable. Around the model, a dome of energy formed. It wasn't like a normal shield. It wasn't a simple barrier. The dome shimmered with rainbow colors and seemed to fold into itself in impossible ways. The model station inside now appeared to exist in multiple locations within the dome, all at the same time. Perfect, Dr. Kim whispered. She felt tears in her eyes but held them back. After 12 years of work, success felt almost unreal. She turned to Dr. Song. Inform Admiral Park that all systems are online. Dr. Song nodded and moved to a special communication panel at the far end of the lab. This device used quantum entanglement. It could send messages instantly across any distance without any possibility of interception. While he sent the message, Dr. Kim walked closer to the glass. The quantum displacement shield was humanity's greatest defensive achievement. Any attack would hit multiple versions of the target at once, spreading the damage across several quantum states. The result was that no single version received enough damage to be destroyed. Admiral Park acknowledges receipt, Dr. Song said when he returned. She says it's time. Dr. Kim nodded. Begin full-scale activation sequence. Throughout the Jupiter and Saturn systems, hidden installations came to life. On moons, in asteroid fields, and in orbit around the gas giants, quantum displacement generators powered up. They had been built over decades, disguised as research stations, mining operations, or simple relay beacons. More than 500 kilometers away from Dr. Kim's laboratory, in Europa orbit, the UNSS Prometheus floated silently in space. For 20 years, it had appeared to be a civilian research vessel studying Jupiter's radiation belts. Its hull was marked with scientific logos and bore no weapons. Alien ships had scanned it hundreds of times and found nothing concerning. That was about to change. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Lee stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The bridge was not large, only 10 stations, all occupied by officers in dark blue uniforms. There were no windows, only screens showing the space around them. Message from Europa base, his communications officer reported. Code phrase, sleeping giant. Captain Lee took a deep breath. Acknowledge receipt. Begin transformation sequence. Throughout the ship, hidden mechanisms activated. Panels that had appeared to be solid hull sections slid away, revealing weapon systems. The ship's outer hull reconfigured itself, armor plates shifting into defensive positions. Inside, walls moved to create new rooms and corridors. Systems that had remained dormant for 2 decades powered up. Transformation at 40%, reported Commander Jin, the first officer. She watched her screen with intense focus. All systems responding correctly. The ship grew longer as sections extended from what had been the front and rear. What had appeared to be scientific equipment deployed into battle configurations. The fake thrusters retracted, replaced by the true propulsion system, gravitic drives developed in secret. 60% complete. Captain Lee watched the external camera views. Anyone observing the Prometheus now would see its true nature emerging. He thought about the thousands of times alien visitors had toured the research vessel, never suspecting what lay beneath the false panels and hidden doors. 80%. The final weapons systems deployed. Gravity lances capable of crushing anything in their path, phase disruptors that could penetrate any known shield, and temporal stasis projectors that could freeze sections of an enemy ship in time. Transformation complete, Captain. The UNSS Prometheus is battle-ready. The ship that now floated in Europa orbit bore little resemblance to the research vessel it had been minutes before. It was 30% larger, with a sleek, angular design. Its hull was a deep black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Captain Lee allowed himself a small smile. Begin quantum shield activation. The energy dome that formed around the Prometheus was much larger than the test version in Dr. Kim's lab. It shimmered with the same rainbow colors, creating the same visual distortion. To any observer, the ship would now appear to be in multiple places at once, impossible to target accurately. Shield stable at 100%, Commander Jin reported. Captain Lee nodded. Send status reports to all fleet units. Request. Captain. The sensor officer interrupted, his voice tense. We're detecting unusual readings at the edge of the solar system. Multiple objects entering from deep space. Captain Lee moved quickly to the sensor station. Show me. The screen displayed the outer solar system. Beyond Neptune's orbit, dozens of objects were appearing. They weren't using any known form of faster-than-light travel. They seemed to be emerging from space itself, as if they had always been there, but had just become visible. Pattern matches intelligence reports, the sensor officer said quietly. It's them. Captain Lee returned to the center of the bridge. His expression remained calm, but his heart beat faster. This was the moment humanity had prepared for over decades. The real reason for all the secrets, all the hidden weapons. The quantum communicator on the bridge activated, showing Admiral Park's face. Captain Lee, are you seeing this? Yes, Admiral. They're earlier than expected. All human forces are activating now, she said. The council meeting is still in progress. The aliens don't know yet. Captain Lee nodded. We'll be ready. As they spoke, the objects moved deeper into the solar system. They were ships, but unlike any built by known species. They seemed partially organic, with hulls that pulsed and shifted like living tissue. There were dozens, then hundreds of them. The communications officer looked up. Captain, I've received the coded transmission from Europa. Message reads, all systems online. The hive approaches. Captain Lee straightened his uniform. The moment had come, the moment he had trained for his entire career. Attention all stations, he said, his voice steady and clear. Battle readiness. This is not a drill. Around him, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. There was no panic, no confusion, just the smooth operation of a team prepared for this exact scenario. Weapons online, reported the tactical officer. Quantum shield at full power, added Commander Jin. Communications ready to coordinate with all human fleet units, said the communications officer. Captain Lee looked at the main screen, at the approaching high ships. They were coming to devour all life in the system, as they had done to countless worlds before. But this time, they would find something they didn't expect. Humanity was ready. Launch alert fighters, Captain Lee ordered. Prepare main weapons. We stand our ground. The Vraxian homeworld of Krell Prime glowed green and purple in the darkness of space. Its 3 moons orbited slowly, each one covered with cities and defense stations. The Vraxians were proud of their world. They often told other species that their defenses were the strongest in the galaxy. No enemy had attacked Krell Prime in over 400 years. That changed today. The first sign of trouble was a strange ripple in space near the outer defense perimeter. Sensors on the nearest moon detected unusual energy readings. The Vraxian defense commander ordered a standard scan. Before the results came back, the ripple expanded. Space tore open. Through the tear came the first high ships. They were not like normal ships. Their hulls looked alive, pulsing, moving, changing shape. Each ship was different, but all shared the same dark purple color and organic appearance. Some were small and fast. Others were massive, the size of small moons. All moved with purpose toward the Vraxian world. The Vraxian defense fleet responded quickly. 200 warships moved to intercept the invaders. Weapons charge, shields activated. The Vraxians had fought many battles against other species. They expected this one to end the same way, with their victory. The high ships did not slow down. They did not communicate or make demands. They simply attacked. Energy beams, unlike anything the Vraxians had seen before, cut through their shields as if they weren't there. Smaller hive vessels crashed deliberately into Vraxian ships, breaking apart on impact but releasing something that ate through hull metal like acid. Vraxian crews screamed as their ships fell apart around them. Within 3 hours, the defense fleet was gone. The moons fell silent as hive forces landed on their surfaces. The Vraxian High Command sent desperate messages to their allies. Then the communication centers went dark. The remaining Vraxian ships, about 40% of their total fleet, abandoned their positions. They fled toward the galactic core, leaving their colonies and outposts without protection. The mighty Vraxians, who had dominated other species for centuries, ran away. 3 Vraxian colony worlds fell silent that same day. No distress calls, no final messages, just silence. Commander Yoon stood on the bridge of the UNSS Defiant. Her ship didn't look impressive from the outside. Until recently, it had appeared to be a simple mining vessel collecting resources from asteroid belts. Now its true nature was revealed. A warship with advanced weapons hidden beneath fake mining equipment. Around her, 11 other ships of similar design formed a tight formation. They had been hiding near Vraxian space for years, disguised as part of a human mining operation. The Vraxians had mostly ignored them, considering human mining technology primitive and not worth attention. That mistake would cost them dearly. Status report. Commander Yoon said. She was not tall, but her presence filled the bridge. Her dark uniform fit perfectly, with the silver stars of her rank on the collar. High forces have taken 3 Vraxian colonies, reported her sensor officer. Vraxian fleet is in full retreat. No signs they plan to return. Yoon nodded. This was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. The Vraxians, for all their talk of military might, had no experience with a truly dangerous enemy. They had grown soft from centuries of easy victories against weaker species. A hive fleet is moving toward the Gallus system, the officer continued. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. That's a human colony, said Lieutenant Han, Yoon's second in command. Yes, Yoon agreed, but unlike the Vraxian colonies, we're ready for them. She turned to the communications officer. Signal the fleet. We move to intercept the hive forces before they reach Gallus. The 12 ships accelerated to full speed. Their engines, hidden for years, revealed their true power. They moved faster than any mining vessel could, cutting through space toward the approaching enemy. 2 hours later, they found the hive. 23 high ships moved in a loose formation. They had no apparent organization or strategy. They simply traveled together toward their next target. Their organic hulls pulsed with strange lights. Occasional energy discharges arsed between ships. They haven't detected us, Lieutenant Han said quietly. Commander Yoon studied the enemy vessels on her screen. These monsters had destroyed 3 Vraxian worlds in hours. The Vraxians had technology that, until recently, humans could only dream of matching. Yet the hive had crushed them easily. The gravity cascade systems are charged and ready, reported the weapons officer. Yoon nodded. This would be the first real test of humanity's secret weapons in actual combat. They had run thousands of simulations, but this was different. Real lives depended on their success. Target the 3 largest vessels, she ordered. Prepare to fire on my command. The human ships moved silently into position. The hive still showed no signs of detecting them. Either their sensors were not as advanced as expected, or they were simply arrogant, not bothering to look for threats. All ships in position, Lieutenant Han reported. Commander Yoon took a deep breath. Activate gravity cascades. The human ships released their most powerful weapons. There was no beam, no visible projectile. The only sign that anything had happened was a slight distortion in space around the targeted high ships. Then the effects began. The space around the three largest hive vessels twisted violently. The gravity cascade created rapidly changing gravity fields, pulling in different directions with tremendous force. The organic hulls of the hive ships couldn't withstand the stress. They compressed in some places and stretched in others. Cracks appeared in their surfaces. Dark fluid leaked into space. The ships trembled, struggling against forces they couldn't fight. Then, with a silent flash of light, they broke apart completely. On the bridge of the Defiant, the crew watched in stunned silence. The weapons had worked even better than expected. 3 targets destroyed. The weapons officer reported, her voice slightly shaky with excitement. No signs of survival. The remaining hive ships reacted immediately. They changed course, heading directly for the human fleet. They moved faster now, with purpose. "They've detected us," Lieutenant Han said. "Good," Commander Yoon replied. "Target the next group. Let's show them what humanity can do." The next hour was intense battle. The high ships attacked with strange energy weapons and tried to ram the human vessels. But the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than expected. Their quantum shields absorbed or deflected most attacks. The gravity cascade weapons continued to tear apart high ships. When it ended, 19 hive vessels had been destroyed. The remaining 4 retreated, vanishing back into the strange ripples in space they had emerged from. "Casualties?" Commander Yoon asked. 2 ships damaged," Lieutenant Han reported. "The Aurora has hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. The Horizon lost shield capacity, but weapons are still online. No deaths." Yoon nodded, relieved but not showing it. "Send the battle data to Earth Command. Admiral Park will want to see this." In the Human Council chamber, alien representatives watched the battle footage with expressions of shock and disbelief. The screen showed Commander Yoon's ships destroying hive vessels with seemingly impossible weapons. This cannot be real," the Drex ambassador said. His 4 arms gestured in confusion. "No civilization has weapons that can manipulate gravity fields with such precision." "No civilization you know of," Admiral Park replied. She stood calmly in the center of the room, watching their reactions. "Humanity has developed technologies you never imagined possible." The Vraxian ambassador's facial tentacles twisted in anger. "Why did you not share these weapons? 3 of our colony worlds are gone. Millions dead." Admiral Park turned to face him directly. "We discovered the hive 30 years ago," she said, her voice hard. "We detected their approach from beyond the galactic rim. We tried to warn the Concordat." General Ta stepped forward. "I personally presented evidence to the Galactic Council in the year 2186. Your predecessors dismissed our findings as primitive human misunderstandings of normal cosmic phenomena." "I have no record of this," the Vraxian said. "The records were sealed by order of the High Concordat." Admiral Park said, "We have copies if you wish to see them." The Myth ambassador's crystalline body dimmed slightly, a sign of embarrassment. "If this is true, a grave mistake was made. While you extracted tributes from us and limited our development, we prepared for war," Admiral Park continued. "We built our weapons in secret. We studied the hive from a distance. We learned their weaknesses. On the screens, more footage played. Human ships engaging hive forces near other systems. The gravity cascade weapons tearing apart the organic hulls. Human colonies protected by quantum displacement shields that the hive could not penetrate. You claimed to protect us as part of the Concordat," Admiral Park said. "But in the end, we protected ourselves. And now we may be the only hope for your species as well." The alien representatives were silent. The proof was before their eyes. Humanity, the species they had considered primitive and barely worth notice, had developed weapons capable of defeating an enemy that had crushed the mighty Vraxian fleet. "What do you propose?" the Drex ambassador asked finally. Admiral Park's expression softened slightly. "A true alliance. equal partners. We will share our technology and strategies. Together, we can push back the hive before more worlds fall. And if we refuse? The Vraxian asked, though his tentacles showed he already knew the answer. Admiral Park gestured to the screens, where footage showed more hive ships emerging near another alien world. Then you face them alone. The Tellurian ambassador stood in the center of the emergency council chamber. His skin, normally a calm blue color, had turned almost white with grief and anger. The patterns that normally swirled across his face had frozen in jagged lines. His voice shook as he addressed Admiral Park. You knew. The words seemed to burst from him. Half our worlds are gone, billions dead. And you knew. Around the room, other alien representatives watched in silence. The emergency meeting had been called after hive forces attacked 6 more worlds in the past week. 4 of them were Tellurian colonies. The once proud Tellurian Confederation was now fighting for its survival. Admiral Park stood before them, her face showing genuine sadness. We tried to warn you. Your governments dismissed our intelligence as human deception. She pressed a button on her wrist device. The main screen showed an official document dated 30 years earlier. It was a report submitted to the Galactic Concordat by a human science vessel. The report detailed unusual energy readings from beyond the galactic rim and predicted the arrival of an unknown hostile force. This report was filed with the Concordat Security Council. Admiral Park said. It was dismissed. Our science vessel was banned from Concordat space for creating panic with false information. The Tellurian ambassador stared at the screen. I never saw this report. Few did. Admiral Park replied. The Concordat leadership buried it. They believe humans were trying to gain more influence by inventing a threat. General Ta stepped forward. He pulled up more documents on the screen. We continued to monitor the hive approach. We submitted 17 more reports over 20 years. All were dismissed or ignored. The Drex ambassador spoke up, his 4 arms making nervous gestures. So you stopped trying to warn us and built weapons instead. We did both, Admiral Park said. But after the 3rd dismissed report, we began preparing for the worst. We knew that if the hive came, we would stand alone. The room fell silent as the truth sank in. The mighty galactic powers had ignored the warnings from the primitive humans. Now they were paying the price. What do we do now? Asked the Myth ambassador, her crystalline body dimmed with fear. The hive has destroyed our main fleet. We cannot stop them alone. Admiral Park's expression changed from sadness to determination. We fight together. Humanity will share our technology. We will teach you how to build effective weapons against the hive. We will stand with you. The Tellurian ambassador looked surprised. After how we treated your people, why would you help us? Because the hive won't stop with your worlds, Admiral Park said simply. And because despite everything, we believe in cooperation more than revenge. In the huge engineering bay of the Tellurian flagship of Eternal Light, Dr. Kim bent over a complex diagram displayed on a floating screen. Around her, a team of 20 engineers, 10 human and 10 Tellurian, worked on various parts of the ship's systems. The room hummed with energy and echoed with the sounds of tools and voices. Your power distribution systems need complete reconfiguration, she explained to Chief Engineer Melos, the senior Tellurian engineer. But we can make this work. Melos looked at the diagram with concern. His blue hands moved over the image, tracing energy pathways. These changes will take weeks to implement. Dr. Kim shook her head. We don't have weeks. The hive forces will reach your homeworld in 6 days. We need to have your fleet ready in 4. Impossible, Melos said firmly. Even with your help, we cannot remake our ships so quickly. Dr. Kim smiled slightly. With respect, Chief Engineer, you haven't seen how humans work under pressure. She turned and called to her team. The human engineers gathered around. Dr. Kim explained the challenge briefly, then assigned teams to different sections of the Tellurian ship. We'll work in shifts, 24 hours a day. she told Malos. Your engineers will work alongside ours. They'll learn our methods as we go. Malos still looked doubtful, but he nodded in agreement. I will arrange for my best teams to assist you. Over the next 4 days, the engineering bay rarely fell silent. Human and Tellurian engineers worked side by side, modifying the alien ship systems to accommodate the new human weapons technology. What started as a tense partnership soon developed into genuine collaboration as the Tellurians saw the effectiveness of human methods. Dr. Kim slept only a few hours each night, moving from team to team, solving problems and encouraging progress. By the 3rd day, dark circles had formed under her eyes, but her focus never wavered. On the morning of the 4th day, Malos approached her as she was checking the final calibrations on the gravity cascade emitter. Dr. Kim, he said formally. Launching stealth shuttles in 3 minutes, the tactical officer reported. Yoon turned to the 12 officers assembled near the shuttle bay doors. They were an unusual group, 8 humans and 4 aliens who had volunteered for this high-risk mission. Each carried specialized equipment designed for this operation. You all know the objective, Yoon said. We plant the consciousness disruptors at the main control node. The devices will sever the Hive's collective intelligence in this sector. A myth officer raised her crystalline hand. Why can we not simply bomb the facility from orbit? The Hive protects its control nodes with exceptional defenses, Yoon explained. Our only chance is a ground team with portable disruptors. The officers nodded in understanding. They had all been briefed, but Yoon knew they were nervous. This would be the deepest penetration into Hive territory yet attempted. As they boarded the stealth shuttles, a Tellurian officer hesitated. Commander, he said quietly, my species is highly susceptible to hive mind influence. 3 of our scout teams were completely taken over. How can you be sure we won't be compromised? Commander Yoon placed a hand on his shoulder. Human neurological patterns are uniquely resistant to hive influence. That's why we must lead this mission. But we've developed shields that will protect you as well. She touched the small device attached to the collar of his suit. This creates a field that mimics human brain wave patterns. It will mask your thoughts from the hive. The Tellurian looked reassured. He boarded the shuttle with new determination. The battle began as their shuttles launched. The main fleet engaged hive forces in orbit, drawing attention away from the small craft slipping toward the planet's surface. The shuttle's stealth technology, another human secret development, made them nearly impossible to detect. They landed 3 kilometers from the main hive facility. The landscape was barren and twisted, reshaped by hive occupation. Strange organic structures grew from the ground, pulsing with unnatural light. Commander Yoon led her team across the terrain, moving carefully to avoid hive patrols. The alien members of the team looked increasingly uncomfortable as they got closer to the facility. I can feel them, whispered the Drex officer, trying to get into my mind. The shields are working, Yoon assured him. Focus on the mission. The hive facility loomed ahead, a massive structure that seemed partly grown rather than built. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the hive ships, as if it were part of a single giant organism. They encountered resistance at the entrance, not soldiers as other species would use, but drone-like creatures that moved with a hive mind intelligence. The team fought through them using specially designed weapons that disrupted the creatures' neural patterns. Inside the facility, they split into 3 groups. Each carried consciousness disruptors that needed to be placed at specific points in the control node. Yoon led the main team toward the central chamber. What they found there was unlike anything they had expected. The control node wasn't a computer or machine. It was a living entity, a massive brain-like organism connected to thousands of tendrils that spread throughout the facility and beyond. Place the disruptors according to plan, Yoon ordered. Her team moved quickly, attaching the devices to specific points on the organic mass. As they worked, the air seemed to thicken with unseen pressure. The alien team members struggled to focus, even with their protective shields. Commander, Lieutenant Han called urgently. Something's happening. The brain-like mass was pulsating faster. Tendrils began to move, reaching toward them. The hive had detected them and was responding. All teams, activate disruptors now. Yoon commanded into her communicator. Across the facility, team members pressed the activation switches on their devices. The disruptors hummed to life, generating fields that interfered with the hive's neural patterns. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The tendrils froze in place. The pulsing slowed, then became erratic. The pressure in the air vanished. Outside, they could hear the sounds of confusion as hive drones lost their connection to the controlling intelligence. "It's working," Han said with relief. Commander Yoon checked her scanner. "The effect is spreading faster than projected. The entire sector should be clear within hours." As they made their way back to the shuttles, they passed hive drones wandering aimlessly or simply standing motionless. Without the collective mind to guide them, they were helpless. In orbit, the battle had turned decisively in favor of the Allied fleet. Hive ships drifted powerless or moved in random patterns, easy targets for the combined firepower of the 7 species. As her shuttle rejoined the Defiant, Commander Yoon allowed herself a small smile. For the first time since the hive appeared, they had won a significant victory. The tide was beginning to turn. The Memorial of Unity stood on the edge of the Sea of Tranquility on Earth's moon. It was massive, over 200 meters tall and 500 meters wide. From orbit, it was the most visible structure on the lunar surface. The memorial was built from stone quarried from every world that had fought in the Hive War, each piece bringing its own color and texture to the monument. Visitors approached along a wide path lined with flags of all 32 civilizations that had joined the final alliance. At night, lights embedded in the lunar soil illuminated the path, creating a river of soft blue light leading to the memorial. The main wall curved in a gray arc. Carved into its surface were the names of every known victim of the hive. Over 12 billion beings from 17 species. The task of collecting and verifying these names had taken 3 years. Some colonies had been completely destroyed, leaving no records. In these cases, census data was used to create as complete a list as possible. At the center of the memorial stood 7 statues, each 9 meters tall. They depicted representatives of different species standing shoulder to shoulder, facing outward as if protecting the galaxy together. The human figure was not placed in the center or made larger than the others, a deliberate choice by the designers to symbolize the equality of all peoples in the new galactic order. Today, 5 years after the final battle against the Hive, thousands of beings gathered at the memorial. They came from across the galaxy to mark the anniversary of victory and to witness a historic moment. Among the crowd, Dr. Kim moved slowly, leaning slightly on a cane. The war had left her with injuries that never fully healed. She nodded to familiar faces as she made her way toward the VIP section. Many stopped to thank her or simply touch her hand. Her work adapting human technology for alien ships had saved countless lives and turned the tide of many battles. Captain Lee, now Admiral Lee, spotted her and came to escort her to her seat. His uniform bore the new insignia of the Galactic Federation Defense Force. "Dr. Kim," he said warmly, "I was afraid you might not make it. Your research team said you've been working nonstop for weeks." Kim smiled. "Some things are too important to miss, Admiral." They took their places near the front of the gathering. Commander Yoon was already seated nearby, deep in conversation with a Tellurian officer. She too had been promoted after the war, now bearing the rank of Commodore. Her fleet had led some of the most critical battles in the final campaign. A hush fell over the crowd as a tall figure approached the speaker's platform. Admiral Park, now High Counselor Park, moved with the same confident grace she had always shown, though her hair had turned completely white in the years since the war began. She wore the formal blue and silver robes of her new office, but her expression remained as direct and honest as when she had first addressed the alien representatives at the beginning of the conflict. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carried clearly through translator devices to all present. We gather today not only to remember those we lost, but to mark a new beginning. The crowd was silent. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors focused intently on her words. 5 years ago, the combined fleets of our peoples achieved final victory over the Hive. It was a victory that seemed impossible when the war began. Many worlds had fallen. Many civilizations faced extinction. She paused, looking out over the gathering. But together, we found strength. Together, we discovered that our differences were far less important than what we shared. The desire to live in peace, to protect our homes, to build rather than destroy. On the giant screens around the memorial, images appeared showing key moments from the war. The first human victories using their secret weapons, the formation of the Alliance fleet, the final battle at the Hive's central nexus. The war taught us that division makes us vulnerable, Park continued. No species can claim superiority over another if we are to survive what comes next. She gestured, and a new image appeared on the screens, a document with 32 signatures at the bottom. Today, I am honored to announce that the Galactic Federation Charter has been ratified by all member worlds. After 5 years of negotiation and planning, we have created a new order based on equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. Applause broke out across the gathering. Many beings embraced their neighbors, regardless of species. Dr. Kim felt tears in her eyes as she watched. The war had been terrible, but from its ashes something beautiful had grown. The Federation is not perfect, Park acknowledged when the applause died down. We will face challenges and disagreements, but we will face them together, as equals. She introduced representatives from each of the 32 civilizations. Each spoke briefly, adding their voice to the historic occasion. The Vraxian speaker, once among humanity's strongest opponents, spoke with surprising humility about the lessons his people had learned. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the large dome complex near the memorial. Here, in a more relaxed setting, former enemies mingled as new allies. Dr. Kim found herself surrounded by young engineers from various species, all eager to discuss her work. Dr. Kim's technology exchange program has been vital to rebuilding efforts, a myth engineer explained to newcomers. Her team has helped restore power and infrastructure to 17 devastated worlds so far. Kim smiled modestly. The exchange goes both ways. We've learned as much from you as you have from us. Across the room, Admiral Lee was deep in conversation with a group of diplomats. His fleet had spent the past 3 years establishing relations with territories on the galaxy's edge, areas previously isolated or hostile. The diplomatic missions have been more successful than we anticipated, he was saying. Even the Vorath Collective has expressed interest in Federation membership, which was unthinkable just a year ago. Commodore Yoon joined their conversation. The security protocols we established have been effective. There have been no major conflicts between member worlds since the charter planning began. High Counselor Park moved through the gathering, speaking briefly with each group. Despite her new status, she remained approachable and direct. When she reached Dr. Kim, she took the scientist's hands in her own. "Without your work, this day would never have come," Park said quietly. Kim shook her head. "It was all of us together. No one person or species could have succeeded alone." Park smiled. "That's exactly the point of today's ceremony." Later that evening, after most guests had departed, a small group gathered in a secure room beneath the reception dome. Present were the highest-ranking officials from the Federation's scientific and defense divisions. The mood here was far more serious than at the celebration above. High Counselor Park activated a secure display. The image showed a section of space beyond the galaxy's edge, seemingly empty except for a few distant stars. 3 of our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual signals from this region, she explained. The pattern is unlike anything we've encountered before, including the Hive. Admiral Lee studied the data scrolling beside the image. "When were these first detected?" 2 months ago, replied Dr. Kim. "At first, we thought it might be sensor malfunctions, But 3 different stations, using different technologies, all recorded the same signals. Could it be natural phenomena? Asked the Drex defense minister. Unlikely, Kim said. The patterns show clear signs of artificial origin. They're too regular, too structured. Commodore Yoon pointed to a specific section of data. These energy signatures are concerning. They're similar to what we saw when the hive first emerged, but on a much larger scale. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even the bravest council members looked uneasy. The hive was difficult enough to defeat, the myth science director said finally. If this is something worse. High Counselor Park straightened her shoulders. The hive nearly destroyed us because we were divided, because we didn't share information or resources, because some believed themselves superior to others. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. We are not making that mistake again. Whatever this is, we face it together. The hive, it seems, was merely the vanguard of something far worse. But we are not the same galaxy it first attacked. We are stronger now, united. Dr. Kim nodded in agreement. I'll assemble a research team immediately. Scientists from all member worlds, our best minds working together. And I'll prepare the fleet, Admiral Lee added. Training exercises with combined forces from all species. Commodore Yoon studied the data once more. We should establish advanced monitoring posts. Get more information before whatever this is arrives. As they continued planning, High Counselor Park felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, at what might be coming, but also pride and hope. 5 years ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Now it happened without hesitation. Whatever waited out there in the darkness between galaxies, it would not find easy prey. It would find a united people, standing together regardless of their differences. It would find a galaxy that had learned the most important lesson of all, that together they were far stronger than they ever could be apart. The war had cost them dearly, but the peace they had built might yet save them all.